My life was never meant to collide with his. At least, not in the violent, twisted way it did. When I first met Adrian, he was introduced to me as my bodyguard, someone assigned to protect me after a series of threatening letters began arriving at my office. He was quiet, calculating, and always alert, with eyes that never seemed to rest, in a presence that made everyone else in the room feel smaller. I thought he was just another man doing a dangerous job, but what I didn't know was that beneath his calm surface burned a fire for revenge. Revenge against my family. Adrian's story began long before I ever met him. His parents had been caught in the crossfire of one of my father's business deals gone wrong. A contract, a betrayal, and then blood spilled in the streets. My father's enemies had struck hard, but Adrian believed, with his whole being, that my family was the true cause of his pain. He trained himself into a weapon, waiting for the right moment to strike. When the threats against me gave him the perfect cover to enter my life as my protector, he accepted the job with one goal: to get close enough to destroy me the way he thought my family had destroyed his. At first, I didn't trust him. He was too perfect, too controlled, and yet something about him felt safe. He followed me everywhere, through the crowds at fundraisers, down dimly lit alleys when I worked late, across the city when I visited clients. His eyes would catch mine sometimes, and I'd feel an unspoken weight there, something darker than a professional duty. I mistook it for the burden of his work. I didn't realize it was hatred he carried like a blade in his chest. The first time his mask cracked was one night in the rain. We were returning from an event, the streets slick and shining with neon reflections, when a car swerved into ours. He pulled me from the wreckage, shielding me with his own body, and I heard him mutter under his breath, "This isn't how you're supposed to go." The words were raw, aching, as if he already had my ending planned. It lodged in my mind like a splinter. Weeks passed, and he never faltered in his role, but I began piecing things together. I noticed the way he clenched his jaw whenever my father's name was mentioned. I overheard him once in a late-night phone call, whispering about debts that would be paid in blood. And then I found the photo, an old, creased picture of a couple holding a little boy, tucked away in his jacket. On the back was a date, and beneath it, my father's signature scrawled across a contract. The truth was unbearable. My protector was my predator. But instead of fear, what grew in me was anger. I had lived in my father's shadow long enough to know the wreckage he left behind. He was ruthless in business, cold in family, and I had spent years resenting the chains he bound me with. Yet, to know that Adrian had lied to me, had entered my life only to destroy it, it shattered something inside me. I played the role of the oblivious daughter, but inside, I was planning my own form of revenge. I began watching him the way he watched me. I asked him questions about his past, feigned concern, and studied the flickers of pain that crossed his face when I mentioned his family. The closer I got, the more complicated it became, because somewhere on that dance of deceit, I began to care for him. His laughter, rare and fleeting, lit up parts of me I didn't know existed. His protective instincts, even if born from hatred, felt genuine in the small moments, the way he reached for my hand in a crowd, the way he stood just close enough to shield me from every danger, even dangers he hadn't orchestrated. One night, after a gala, we sat alone in the car, the city lights fading as we drove into the countryside. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken truths, until I asked him, "Do you ever regret the life you chose?" His hands tightened on the wheel. He admitted softly, "Every day." His voice cracked, and for a moment I saw not the avenger, but the broken boy who had lost everything. My heart ached for him, even as my mind screamed to remember what he intended for me. The twist came when I decided I could not be his victim. If he wanted revenge, he would taste it himself. I lured him deeper into trust, into moments where the line between us blurred. Then, when the time was right, I turned the knife he had sharpened toward me back against him. I exposed his hidden contacts to the authorities, ensuring his carefully laid out plans unraveled. I revealed to him that I had known all along, that every smile, every touch of my hand against his arm had been part of my own design. The night I confronted him, it was raining again, just as it had been the night he saved me from that crash. He stood across from me in my father's study, drenched and trembling with rage and heartbreak. "You played me," he said, his voice hoarse. "And I was going to kill you," I shot back. He closed his eyes as if the weight of our lives crushed him. "I wanted revenge," he admitted, "but somewhere along the way, I wanted you more." His confession tore through me, because by then I felt the same. But love in our world was poisoned. He had come into my life seeking to end it, and I had turned the blade on him in return. There was no redemption in what we had built, only ashes and regrets. We never kissed, never touched in the way two people in love are meant to. Our bond existed in glances, in stolen moments, in the way silence between us was louder than words. In the aftermath, Adrian disappeared. The authorities couldn't find him, and my father insisted he was gone for good. But I knew better. He was out there, somewhere, carrying both his grief and the ghost of what we might have been. Sometimes I wonder if he thinks of me, the woman he was meant to destroy, but instead destroyed him. I wonder if he hates me or if he carries the same twisted longing I do. My life was turned upside down the day I met him. Not because he came as my bodyguard with vengeance in his heart, but because he left as the only man I ever loved, and the only one I could never have. And so, I live now in the ruins of what we both tried to build out of hate, knowing that love, when it came for us, was too late. It was a fire we never allowed ourselves to touch, because we knew it would burn us alive. Instead, it lingers, unspoken, unfinished, and eternal.